Missing white woman syndrome is a phrase used by social scientists to describe the extensive media coverage, especially in television, of missing person cases that involve young, white, upper-middle-class women or girls. Sociologists define the media phenomenon as the undue focus on upper-middle-class white women who disappear, with the disproportionate degree of coverage they receive being compared to cases concerning missing women of other ethnicities and social classes, or with missing males of all social classes and ethnicities. The PBS News anchor Gwen Ifill is said to be the originator of the phrase. Although the term was coined to describe disproportionate coverage of missing person cases, it is sometimes used to describe the disparity in news coverage of other violent crimes. The concept is similar to hierarchy of death, in which certain types of deaths garner more news coverage than others. Media coverage, United States. With regard to missing children, statistical research which compares national media reports with FBI data shows that there is marked underrepresentation of African American children in media reports relative to non-African American children. A subsequent study found that girls from minority groups were the most underrepresented in these missing children news reports by a very large margin. When the disappearances of Lacey Peterson and Natalie Holloway became sensational news stories, a pregnant black Hispanic woman named LaToya Figueroa disappeared from Philadelphia 3 years later and attracted less national attention, despite efforts by her family to enlist the media in helping to find her. One observer also saw contrasts between the attention received by Peterson and Evelyn Hernandez, who was 9 months pregnant when she disappeared in 2002. Kim Pasqualini, president of the National Center for Missing Adults, observed that media outlets tend to focus on damsels in distress, typically affluent young white women and teenagers. Dr. Corey L. Armstrong pointed out in the Washington Post that the pattern of choosing only young, white, middle-class women for the full damsel treatment says a lot about a nation that likes to believe it has consigned race and class to irrelevance. Canada, according to a study published in the Law and Society Association, Aboriginal women who go missing in Canada receive 27 times less news coverage than white women. They also receive dispassionate and less detailed headlines, articles, and images. United Kingdom, University of Leicester criminology professor Yvonne Jukes cites the murder of Amanda Dowler, the murder of Sarah Payne, and the Suam murders as examples of eminently newsworthy stories about girls from respectable middle-class families and backgrounds whose parents used the news media effectively. She writes that, in contrast, the street murder of Damilala Taylor initially received little news coverage, with reports initially concentrating upon street crime levels and community policing, and largely ignoring the victim. Even when Damilala's father flew into the UK from Nigeria to make press statements and television appearances, the level of public outcry did not, Jukes asserts, reach the near-hysterical outpourings of anger and sadness that accompanied the deaths of Sarah, Millie, Holly, and Jessica. In January 2006, London Police Commissioner Ian Blair described the media as institutionally racist. As an example, he had referred to the murder of 2 young girls in Suam in 2002. He said almost nobody understood why it became such a big story. 2 cases of missing white girl syndrome that have been given as contrasting examples, the murder of Hannah Williams and the murder of Danielle Jones. It was suggested that Jones received more coverage than Williams because Jones was a middle-class schoolgirl, whilst Williams was from a working-class background with a stud in her nose and estranged parents. Other alleged cases of disproportionate media interest, Jessica Lynch, social commentaries pointed to media bias in the coverage of soldier Jessica Lynch versus that of her fellow soldiers, Shoshana Johnson and Lori P.S. Dewar. All 3 were ambushed in the same attack during the Iraq War on March 23, 2003, with P.S. Dewar being killed and Lynch and Johnson being injured and taken prisoner. Lynch, a young, blonde, white woman, received far more media coverage than Johnson and P.S. Dewar, with media critics suggesting that the media gave more attention to the woman with whom audiences supposedly more readily identify. Lynch herself leveled harsh criticism at this disproportionate coverage that focused only on her, stating in a congressional testimony before the United States House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, I am still confused as to why they chose to lie and tried to make me a legend when the real heroics of my fellow soldiers that day were, in fact, legendary. People like Laurie P. Stewart and First Sergeant Dowdy who picked up fellow soldiers in harm's way. Or people like Patrick Miller and Sergeant Donald Walters who actually fought until the very end. The bottom line is the American people are capable of determining their own ideals of heroes and they don't need to be told elaborate tales. Presumed kidnapping of blonde Angel in Greece. In October 2013 a girl estimated to be about 4 years of age was found in the custody of a Roma couple in Greece and was presumed to have been abducted. The story about the blonde Angel, and the search for her biological parents received international media coverage. A Roma rights activist commented on the case to say imagine if the situation were reversed and the children were brown and the parents were white. The child was later identified as Maria Ruseva. Her biological mother was a Bulgarian Roma who gave Maria up for adoption. Cited instances. The following missing person cases have been cited as instances of missing white woman syndrome. Researchers and journalists found that these instances garnered a disproportionate level of media coverage relative to contemporary cases involving missing girls, women of non-white ethnicities, and missing males of all ethnicities. The date of death or disappearance is given in parentheses. Polly Claus, a 12-year-old girl who was found murdered. Her murderer was convicted. Chandra Levy, a 24-year-old intern, she was missing for several months and her skeletal remains were found. Her murderer was convicted. Elizabeth Smart, a 14-year-old girl, missing for 9 months after being in captivity. Her captor was sentenced to life in prison. Lacey Peterson, a 27-year-old pregnant woman murdered by her husband. Drust Jodin, a 22-year-old student who was found murdered. Her murderer was convicted, and the case prompted the Drust Jodin National Sex Offender Public Registry. Brooke Wilbger, a 19-year-old student who was abducted and murdered. Her murderer revealed the location of her body and was convicted. Laurie Hacking, a 27-year-old woman murdered by her husband. Natalie Holloway, a 18-year-old high school senior who disappeared in Aruba and remains missing. She was declared legally dead on January 12, 2012. Taylor Bell, a 17-year-old Virginia Commonwealth University freshman who disappeared and was later found dead. Her murderer was convicted. Michelle Gardner Quinn, a 21-year-old undergraduate at the University of Vermont who disappeared and was later found dead. Her murderer was convicted. Tara Grant. Madeleine McCann, a 3-year-old girl who disappeared from her parents' hotel room during a family holiday in Portugal. Described by the Daily Telegraph as the most heavily reported missing person case in modern history. Holly Bobo, a 20-year-old nursing student who went missing from her home in Darden, Tennessee. Her remains were found in September 2014. 2 men have been charged with her murder and kidnapping. Lauren Spiro, a 20-year-old Indiana University student who disappeared after a night of drinking. She remains missing. See also, racism, institutional racism, white privilege, damsel in distress, media bias, hierarchy of death, references. Further reading, Wanzo, Rebecca. The Era of Lost Girls, on Body and Event. Differences 1999 a 126 doi, 10.1215 over 10,407,391-2008-005 missing woman ignored because she's black? Article about the lack of coverage around Athena Curry's disappearance, missing since May 2011. External links, Missing White Woman's Syndrome on TV Tropes, blackandmissing.org, Black and Missing but Not Forgotten.